Hi, everyone. Welcome to the board wrap-up for the month of August 2015 as Ponca City schools prepare for the opening. They held their August board meeting. We'll talk about that on this edition of our show. But Dr. Pennington, I guess a good place to start would be the start of school. Are we ready to go?
Well, Phil, this is always an interesting time of year as we have, the students who have been with us before they're returning, and then we have an influx of new enrollees and trying to get everything balanced out so that we have our kids distributed across the district is always difficult. And right now, this year, our challenge is with our first grade enrollment at Union and Woodlands, and we're in the process as we speak today. Ms. Terry Vogel, our Director of Elementary Curriculum, is having to call parents and tell them that the first grade classes at Union and Woodlands are full and their children are going to have to attend school someplace else. And that's never a fun conversation, and it's not anything you ever want to do. And the truth is, we would not be doing it if we could find teachers. And that's the frustrating thing about it from our standpoint, is that we spent really from about February on trying to hire enough teaching staff so that we would not have to do anything like this. And the teachers they're just not there. They're just not out there, and it's not only an issue for this year, but it makes me extremely concerned about next year. If we had one less first grade teacher in the district, we would have schools with class sizes over 30, and it's not good for kids. It's just not good for kids, and I don't know what Oklahoma's going to do about it. It's a problem that I believe is created by the legislature. And elected officials in Oklahoma who for years have neglected to do anything seriously about teacher salary schedules. They've just kind of assumed that we'd always have teachers. They've imposed rules as far as teacher evaluation that are driving people out of the profession, and the people are going to pay the price of the kids. And so it's unfortunate, and I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, and it's just it's really a sad day around here today as Terry's having to make those phone calls and break that news to parents.
Will those students then go to one of the other elementary schools? It's just going to be a transportation issue for those parents.
What we did is whenever we did our new enrollment process this year, and so when somebody comes in and completes the process, we get a time stamp on their enrollment form, and so those last parents to enroll, and for the most part, we're talking about most everybody who. There may be a few exceptions, but if you made it into the original enrollment window, the original time we had set up in July, those children are going to school where they live. The vast majority, and I think really all these folks, are individuals who came in and enrolled after that date. For some people are on vacation. There's things that happen. I'm not blaming the parents. I'm just trying to tell you what happened. And so what we're doing is we're looking at those enrollment stamps, and we're going through the process of whoever enrolled last, and if they are a student at Woodlands, we're sending those children to two schools, Trout and Garfield, and then the Union students are being transferred to Lincoln. And so how did you pick those schools? Well, there are two things. One is they happen to have space in their first grade classes. So, it's one of those odd things that we run into all the time where, you have enough teachers in the district to teach a particular grade and to divide the kids out in an even fashion, but that's not how kids live. That's not where people live. And so, sometimes it'll be fifth grade at one building and first grade at another building, and so you end up moving kids around. And then the second thing we look at is we look at places where we already have buses going that direction so that students can go to their home site, they can get on a bus, and they can and we don't have to, like drive by, take a long route to where they're going to go. So it's a transportation issue, and then it's a space issue, and you know, we right now trout is now full, and so we're trying to we're placing those kids at Garfield, and it's hard for parents. You know, parents get emotional about this. We're talking about first graders, and so you know that's always a, you know, they're talking about babies, and so they don't you know, it's just hard. And I think any of us who have had children that have been first grade kids or kindergartners, we understand that. I mean, none of us, and it's not anything anybody wants to do, but that's just where we are. And so hopefully people will be patient, and you know, the thing that's frustrating about it, and it goes back to the way we evaluate schools. You know, we have the same textbooks, our teachers go through the same training, we have the same curriculum maps for every school in this district. We have some schools that have a high grade and some schools that have a low grade. Well, you know, we believe that the teacher quality in those buildings is the same. That we have good teachers at each side, we have people that work hard at each side. So what's the difference in performance? Well, unfortunately, the difference in performance is not tied to the effort that students are making, and it's not tied to the efforts teachers are making. It's not tied to the curriculum. It's very just a factor of the social economic condition of that school. And what's really frustrating is if you used a different kind of measure. If you measured how much students learned in a year, what we call growth, some of our schools that have the lowest grade would have the highest grade because their kids are making a lot of progress. And that's really what it's all about. You know, you want your child to go to school and you want them to learn during that year. Well, I promise you that you know, we've got the numbers to show that our kids are learning at an exceptional rate at schools like Garfield and Lincoln. They just have big gaps, especially when they're little. And you know, I've said this a bunch of times. When those kids stay with us for 12 years, by the time they're ready to leave the high school, you know, there's not a lot of difference academically. There are some differences academically when they first started. That's not the fault of those kids, and it doesn't mean they're not good kids. It just means that and it's not mean those parents are bad parents. It's just you know, if you're trying to work two jobs to put food on the table, you don't have a lot of time to sit around and read to your son or daughter. And you'd love to, but you just can't do it because you're trying to feed your family. So it's frustrating from our standpoint because it labels our schools, which again makes parents who we're asking to transfer to that school, that makes them very nervous. And we believe it's a false evaluation. So we'll get through it. You know, the interesting thing, I've told several parents this, and I don't think it does any good, but we do this every year. This year's probably been the worst that we've had such a large number of overflow kids. But over the years, we've had parents who were very nervous, didn't want to put their child on a different site. But when they got to the site, whether it was Garfield or Lincoln or Roosevelt or Liberty or wherever it was, once they've gotten there, they've been fine. Their kids have made friends, they've enjoyed it, and a lot of times they don't want to go back to their home school. But it's just that initial getting everything started. So, you know, we just ask people to bear with us and give us an opportunity to get this worked out. And again, you know, we've done everything we can do to find staff to put in those buildings. We are in a crisis in Oklahoma, and that'll probably be a theme you hear me repeat a lot this year.
The Ponca City schools had a different enrollment procedure for this year as opposed to previous years. And Dr. Pennington, I'd like to know whether you thought that was a good enrollment procedure, whether you liked the way things went this year for enrollment.
Oh, I think it was a lot better. And there's a couple of reasons for that. For parents that have children in multiple sites, and you know, you've been through this, when you have a child that is in elementary school and middle school, you had to go to two different places to enroll. And some people have children in elementary school, middle school, and high school, so they had to make 3 trips. And so this way they could go to one spot and get everything done at one time. So we thought that was very beneficial. The other thing it did is because we weren't just everybody showing up at, you know, the 2 days before school started, it gives us a chance to get the paperwork done correctly so that it's entered into our system correctly. We used to spend the first 2 months of school correcting enrollment information. And again, and the reason for that is because of technology, all those reports that we do, and we send, I don't think the public understands how many reports we send to the state government, which eventually get to the federal government. But in the past, those things were kind of independent of each other. Now they all link up. And so if you have something different on one form or another form, then neither one of the forms can be submitted, and you spend hours trying to fix that. So it's critical that you get the paperwork, get students into the system correctly. The other thing we found is we had a significant number of addresses for students for the 2014-15 school year that were not the same addresses they brought to us this summer. We did something we haven't done really in a long time, and that is we made every parent bring us some type of official documentation that showed their proper address. It could be an electric utility bill, and there were some other things that they could turn in. And we had about 800 students system-wide that there was a difference in the address. Now, some of that was because children moved. Some of it was because people were using a family member's address so that they could ensure that their child went to school in an attendance zone. And what was interesting about that was it wasn't the perception would be, well, that's everybody who's trying to send their kid to Lincoln or to Trout and Woodlands. That's not true. We had just as many people that had improper addresses at Lincoln as they did at Woodlands. But what it really boils down to more than anything else is parent convenience. I have to go to work early. I need to leave my child with my mom and dad so they can get them to school. I actually live in the Woodlands district. My parents live over at Lincoln, and they're going to be the before school and after school babysitter, and so it's very important for me my child be in that Lincoln attendance zone. And I don't want to go through the transfer process because I may not get my transfer. So for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time ever, we're very confident that we at least have the correct addresses for every child in the district, and we know what our numbers should be at each school site. Now, once we get school started, we'll go back and we'll look at all that, and we may make some boundary changes based on that information. But it's just important. It helps us. And it helps us be able to structure our schools on our boundaries in such a way that we can distribute students more evenly among our sites.
So if you do find out somebody has used an address that is really not where the child lives, what do you do? How do you solve that?
Well, they go to school where they live. And so we sent a whole bunch of letters out last week that said that, this is the school that your child will attend for the 2014 or 2015-16 school year. Most people have understood that. We've had some that have come in and they've got some very extenuating circumstances. Look, we want people to go to school where they want to go to school. It doesn't do anybody any good for us to force a student to go to Trout when they don't want to be there, for whatever reason it may be. So we always try to accommodate, but we have to do that in a structured way. We just can't be given transfer or moving kids all throughout the school year. So we try to put some structures in place. We try to follow those. It's like anything else. There are always exceptions. There's always some emergency that you may not know about. There may be a protective order in place for a child. There may be a DHS situation. There may be a lawsuit or some kind of legal action that when parents can come and they can show us that there's a restraining order against some of this stuff is family related. You got families that these may be cousins, but maybe the parents are involved in a dispute of some kind, and those kids, because they love their mom and dad, are arguing all the time about adult stuff. So we try to accommodate that, but that only lasts for so long, because eventually we all go to West and we all go to East and we all go to the high school. So we have this kind of artificial division for the first 6 grades of school, and so I mean, but we're gonna, like I say, this is always a challenging. The first of the school year, really till now, till Labor Day, is always a challenging time of year. As we try to get class sizes balanced, we try to get kids where they need to be, and so we can start having school.
This is the board wrap-up show, and I'm going to give you an opportunity if items occurred on the agenda that you'd like to talk about to your constituents about the August board meeting.
I think probably the main thing, what we spent most of our time on last night, was talking about new board policies. We do this every year. I think this year we're going to have about 20 changes to board policy. All those changes are because of changes in either state or federal law, and it's just funny how many times they go through and they change a word, and so because they've changed a word, now you've got to change your policy. Probably the most significant change is we now are required in our Safe Schools committees to talk about suicide prevention. That committee, and we have one at every school site, has been given lots of tasks over the years. They originally were designed just to talk about building safety. And then they were given the direction to talk about bullying, and now they've gotten suicide. And so we keep, and those are all challenges. And I as a society, we're concerned about kids, and we're concerned about students harming themselves. But it's just funny to me that the people that in the legislature that fuss about schools the most, and they don't want to give us the money we need to operate. They want to make it easier for people to go to private schools by taking public money and giving it to them. But they still lay all the challenges involving children on our doorstep, and they expect us to deal with it. And we will. I mean, we'll deal with it, and we'll do the best we can with limited resources to try to address the needs of kids. But I think it just kind of points out that that we have, and we don't have adequate funding for our schools. We don't have adequate funding for mental health. We don't have adequate funding for DHS and other support services for students. And again, you can give us those responsibilities, but without money to do anything about it, we can talk about it, but we can't really affect any change. So we don't have the dollars to do it. So I mean, it's a little frustrating, and I don't know. We're going to have to, as a state, I think, have some. I hope the legislature will really sit down and address the issue of the state budget, and their decision could be that we're not going to bring in any more revenue, and we're just going to cut everything to the bare bones. But then they need to stand up and make those cuts, own them, and be accountable to the taxpayers for the decisions they've made, rather than kind of find ways to hide behind it or blaming, we have enough money for schools if we had less school districts or if we had less administration. Those are all bogus arguments. But they deflect the criticism to somebody else. And I don't envy their job. They've got a tough job, but they need to stand up and be accountable for the decisions that they make.
One final thing, we are still 2 months away, but it's going to be here before we know it, our school bond issue. And I'd just like you to kind of, if you could, review what's going to happen over the next couple of months. We're going to be talking about it a lot on this program and on the radio and the newspaper, but I hope people are aware that in October, a very, very important bond issue is going to come before our voters.
Yeah. We obviously, starting this month, we'll start getting out to civic groups in town and to the local student organizations. This week I happen to, or in a couple of weeks, I speak at the Rotary Club about the bond issue. We'll be talking to our music boosters, athletic boosters. We'll be talking to parents at the sites that significant improvements are going to be made in their schools, make sure they understand the bond issue and how important it is. And then we'll also be communicating with the community. We'll have some radio spots and some TV ads trying to let our public know what's on this bond issue. I think that again, and this is my perspective. I mean, I understand that I may view things differently than some of the public does. Uh, you know, one thing we'll talk about is this bond due issue is not a tax increase, and it's not. Now the other side of that is, and I think, again, I've never tried to hide behind this, if the bond issue doesn't pass, and we don't pass a bond issue before we make our next payment on the existing bonds we have, then you would see a tax decrease. That's a fact. We have no intention of letting that happen. We believe that we have plenty of projects in this district that need to be addressed, and the only way we can fix those is with bond dollars. So we're gonna, you know, it goes back, and especially for people who are new to the community. You know, I think this is something that's important to understand. And Phil, you know this very well, that we went about 20 years in this district without any significant improvements to facilities. We didn't fix the facilities we had. We didn't build anything new. And so as a result of that, our facilities were embarrassing. I mean, I've told this story many times. I don't ever forget my first trip to Ponca City was as superintendent of Blackwell, was to go to a 8th grade basketball game at East. And that was 2000 to 1995-96 school year. And I was stunned at what East looked like. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how bad a shape that building was in. I thought I was at a school in inner city Kansas City or St. Louis. I just was stunned. And I'd never really, I mean, I knew about Ponca City. I'd been to the gym, the high school gym, when it was relatively new. I actually played in the old gym as a high school student. But I just couldn't believe East. And so we did some, you know, as we would come to Ponca City, go to dinner and those kinds of things, we'd drive around, and I just was pretty stunned at the condition of the facilities because the reputation of the school district was so good. But back in that same time frame, a group of citizens and the school district had lots of meetings, lots of discussions across the city, and they made a commitment to improve facilities. And at that time, they settled on an assessment of 22 mills for bond projects, that we would do bond issues, we would make school improvements, but we'd keep our mill levy as close to 22 mills as we could. And that has served us well since 1995-96. And as a result of that, we've made significant improvements to the facilities in this district. East has went through a major renovation. We've had a major renovation at West. We've done lots of work at Lincoln, even though it's one of our newest buildings. You think about that, Lincoln's almost 20 years old, and we still consider it to be a new building. We built a new Garfield. Roosevelt is a beautiful building renovation there. I mean, we just, and we're going to have an open house for Woodlands this Sunday, and people are going to see what we did there. So we've done lots of things over the years, but there's still more to do. And the district looks at that. We kind of look at that as almost a sacred bond, that we're going to keep the mill levy at 22 mills, or as close to it as we can. And then if the community will keep passing bond issues, then we'll be able to continue to upgrade our facilities, build new things, without having to go up to what some districts do, of a mill levy of 30 mills, 35 mills, or above, in order to get caught up or to build new facilities. And so, that's how we structure our bond issues. So that's the first thing. And I think that if you've not lived here in Ponca City, you don't know that. So this bond project is going to kind of, I guess you would say, continue the tradition we've had here for the last 20 years. We are going to address safety and security at Lincoln. We're going to improve energy efficiency at East. There's no telling. I mean, we have a little form we fill out every year on energy savings that we've made, and we can document millions of dollars of savings to this community with lower electric usage and natural gas usage, because of the measures we've taken to improve energy efficiency, putting new windows throughout the district in buildings, and putting in more energy efficient HVAC systems. Now, unfortunately, it's just kind of like at home. The electric bill keeps going up, and so you don't see real dollar savings, but our bills would be so much higher if we hadn't done that. And we need to do that at East. We haven't done that at East. But we're going to continue to work on West. It would have been nice if we could have shut West down for a year, moved kids somewhere else, but it's just too many students. You can't do that. So we've got to do West a little bit at a time. And I would challenge anybody to go into West and walk into one of those restrooms and not immediately know that that's a good investment of money. I mean, those restrooms are 50 years old, and they feel like it when you go in there. The big dollar issue on this is curricular activities, extracurricular activities. The fine arts building, and then improvements to the football stadium, an athletic training facility, and then a football locker room. But we look at those, and it's just about providing our kids with the facilities that our peer school districts have. Now does Newkirk, Blackwell, Tonkawa, will they have those facilities? No, but they're not our peer school districts. Our peer school districts are Bartlesville, Stillwater, Bixby, Sand Springs, Sapulpa, Enid. Those are our peers. We're not talking about Union Jinks, Broken Arrow. What's funny about it is I've had a couple of parents come to me since we've announced this and tell me how appreciative they are, because their students have told them about how the kids can't help but compare, right? You get off a bus and you're at Bixby and you look at their facilities and you look at your facility and you kind of go, wow, this is a better place than I am. And so we need to eliminate that stuff. And the bottom line is we can afford to do it. It's not like it's going to dramatic. I mean, again, people's taxes will stay the same. And so because of that, I just think it's a very doable thing. And I think there's been a little bit of confusion. Unfortunately, the newspaper, when they first published the article about the bond issue, they had the wrong date in, and that caused some concern that somehow the district was flip-flopping or changing its mind, and that's not true. The bond issue was always set for October 13th. You can check the board minutes and see it. And then there's been some concern about how much planning went in, and again, we've got archives of this show where we can go back and we can show people where we talked about the work of the Long Range Planning Committee and all the things they did, the tours we took, the recommendations they made. We talked about this several years ago, that we had recommendations and that we were going to follow those with a first phase, second phase, and this is the second phase of those recommendations. So, obviously not everybody's going to agree with this, and there will be some people that will be opposed to it. I just hope that those who are opposed will make sure that whatever information they provide is factual. And if it's your opinion, then state it's your opinion. There's a difference when my opinion is that we shouldn't do this, as opposed to trying to present facts in a way that are not accurate.
Dr. Pennington, good luck to you and your staff on the opening of school. We appreciate your time. For Dr. Pennington and Chris Adams behind the camera, I'm Phil Turney.